everybody.
Carol. Is Marty here?
Take our seats, that'd be great.
Marty.
Get started.
I haven't seen her. Yes. He has a pink shirt on. So beautiful. I told everybody we were going. My mother and I were cheer fans. And I love that she was taller than
All right. Penn State.
I'm serious.
Everything's on wheels. Putting on last year. Thank you so much. There we go. Uh-oh.
Oh, I hate these pictures.
Yeah.
No, wait till you see here to me.
What's that?
Oh my God. You two look so much alike.
Right into the mic.
No, you two.
All that watching your training is going to pay off for you. So thanks everybody. Really appreciate you coming. You know, if Don was standing up here, he'd want me to pull my speech out of his sleeve and say, "No, book your sleeve," right? So.
Is there one make that loud?
Is that better?
There.
There we go. All right. You know, if you knew Don, you knew he had a keen sense of humor, and you just can't look at some of these pictures and not giggle. But I gave serious consideration to wearing an Adam West Batman suit up here. Then I thought no one really wants to see me in tights, so we'll leave that one alone. But I want to thank everybody for coming, friends and family. You know, obviously we're here to celebrate Don, honor his life. You know, he was a great guy. You know, our hearts are heavy because we lost him, but I think everybody in this room can probably tell us a story that makes you laugh, right? And Don always had a smile on his face. He always lit up the room when you came in, and I think that's what we need to walk out of the room and remember him by. You know, I had the pleasure, I guess I should tell you who I am. My name is Dwayne Thorpe. I've had the pleasure of being married to Arlene, Don's sister, for 30 years, 30 plus. Don't ask me the exact number, Arlene. Don was a perfect uncle for our kids, and you know, we found out over the last few weeks that Don's the uncle to pretty much half the kids in Pittsburgh. You know, we thought we got special treatment, but we're just family, so it didn't matter. But you know, Don would always show up at a house with a toy or a box of some treats that he knew darn well we didn't approve of. And so the kids loved him, right? Obviously the kids loved him, but he was just, you know, he was always a good sport, always along for whatever we kind of wanted to do. As long as it didn't involve too much physical exercise, but other than that, it was good. You know, his infectious laughter, probably not too many people in the world that could get away with right? But Don pulled it off. I don't know how he did it. You know, we've learned so much from all of you over the last month or so about just great stories that Don, what he did for you, what he did for your family, how he treated your kids, how your kids looked at him. And that just means so much. I would ask, this wasn't part of the script, but there are little slips over here on this picture table. If you guys could, we're going to put together a memory book for Don. If you have just a little anecdote about Don, write it down on the slip so we can keep it and share it in memories, and maybe we'll get it online so you guys can all look at it. You know, Don was in the hospital his last few weeks, and it really didn't come as any surprise, but the staff at the hospital would say, "Wow, this guy was a great guy." We don't see too many people that just every time the elevator opens up, there's 5 more people to come see Don. And the nurses started calling him Uncle Don too, so you know he's all right. So, you know, I was talking to some folks last night that have been friends with him for years, and I said, yeah, you know, he told us a lot of really good stories about you guys. And somebody looked at me and says, you should hear the ones he told us about you guys. So, you know, I think say no more about that, but, you know, he'll be missed. On behalf of our family, it really does mean a lot to see all you guys coming out here to celebrate Don. You know, we'll have some folks come up and talk. I will tell you that it took a fair amount of whittling to get down to half of Pittsburgh that wanted to stand up here and talk. So we'll have a few family members, and then we'll have some of his cherished friends come up. But I can tell you that first of all, he would probably hate all this being center of attention. But just listen to the common theme, I think, of what everybody has to say, and the answer is Don's a very loving person. So first I'm going to have his nephew, Adam Shapiro, come up. And then after Adam's done, I'll have my two children, Sarah and Alex, come up. Adam, want to come up? She said I had to dance if there was a lag.
All right, let's see if I've learned from Dwayne on how to use this properly so everyone can hear me.
No.
No? All right, well, glad I said that out loud. How about now?
Is that the loudest?
Yeah, he's okay.
It sounds like we're
I
okay.
gotta bring my hearing aids.
We've got to record it on the camera for later for you, Mom.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to echo what Dwayne had opened with and thank everyone for being here. It really does mean a lot to us to see this kind of turnout for our uncle, and to kind of confirm what we already knew, what a wonderful, loving person he was. For those of you who I have not met, I am Adam, as Dwayne mentioned. I am Don's oldest nephew. A lot of my memories of early childhood are punctuated by Donnie Boy coming out to visit. And it was always like a highlight of whatever was going on for him to come out, because he was always so excited to see us. He always had a toy, he always had a gift, he always wanted to take us out on some adventure and do whatever we wanted. And he was just thrilled to be around us. And it was really interesting. I remember being a kid, and it made me feel special kind of being with him, because there were certain ways where he made it okay to be silly, to have fun with things, to joke around, right? I mean, I remember I've seen every episode of Rocky and Bullwinkle or Popeye television release, because he had them all on videotape and then DVD, and every joke he referenced was from those. And you know, he enjoyed these things as a child, and now he had these nephews in his life, and it was important to him that he spread this thing that he really loved. And I think it's important to have someone like that where it's okay to be silly, because I think very clearly when you're a child, one thing you kind of differentiate is at some point the world changes and the way that you are is going to be different. And I think that's inherently a little scary. And my fondest memories being a kid are these little things with him. And I always appreciated how well Donnie had sort of defined himself as a person. Like, he was someone who within maybe a minute of seeing him, you could kind of get an idea if this is going to be someone you would really enjoy or not. Like, do you like the Steelers? Because everything he wore had something Steelers related, which if you live in Pittsburgh, admittedly is way more common. But out in San Diego, where we're from, when he would come to visit, like everyone knew exactly what kind of person he was. He broadcast, he made it very clear, and so I always found it kind of amazing how quickly he made friends with people. He was very authentic and he was very defined, and for a lot of people, you don't always have the chance to really know what they're thinking in any given situation, and with Donnie, that was never an issue, because he always was happy to tell you exactly what he thought about whatever was going on. I remember very clearly knowing what kind of foods Donnie would eat, because I would watch him take a bite of something and go, I absolutely hate that. Loudly, for everyone. Everyone got to hear that. And you know, he was someone who took a lot of pride being from Pittsburgh. You know, part of the joke was he'd come out and he would try to teach us all the Pittsburgh slang. You know, he didn't want to go downtown and some hop and that kind of nonsense. And he wanted us to kind of really know where my mom came from and where the family came from, and to kind of appreciate this world. And I'm very grateful to even know someone who was like that, who loved their community and loved their family and loved their hometown enough that like that was the identity that they carried with them wherever they went. And you know, I used to joke that if I ever wanted to go into stand-up comedy, that the first thing I would do would pay Don to show up to every show, because I wouldn't have to be very good. Everyone would still find me funny. You know, he had a kind of laugh that was like almost musical. Like there was a kind of joy that you felt just hearing it, that whatever was going on, things became funny and lighthearted and silly when he was around. And I'm grateful to know the impact that he had on our lives and the impact he had on everyone else's lives. But the truth is that this has been a very hard year for us. And you know, there are certain kinds of losses that there's a funnel to normalization afterwards. The deaths that you are aware will be hard, but are a part of life. And there's a path that's very straightforward from that to things being okay. And then there are the losses where that path is not very clear. And Donnie had always been a very private person. You know, he lived by himself away from, we were in Southern California, the family was in Virginia and Florida, and while we made an effort to get together and to communicate, you know, there was parts of his lives that we didn't really get to witness. And so when we get the call that he is in the hospital and he is going through liver failure, and that he had developed a problem with his drinking, you know, it was a little flooring. You know, there wasn't a lot that we were able to be prepared for that. And I know some of his friends were involved and were aware of the things he was struggling with, and made the effort to be there for him. And I know that he was actively trying to pull his life in a direction that he wanted. And after my brother and after my grandmother, that you know, he was unmoored, I think. My grandma gave him a lot of purpose. He was very attentive. He was the most loving, attentive son that I could imagine in that situation. And you know, I don't know what he felt or what his life looked like after that, but it is, I do want to acknowledge that this loss carries something with it that is a little murkier, and that makes that a little harder. I'm also very grateful for the family that I have and the people that are here who show up and support us through these things, because it means the world, knowing people care. And I do confidently believe there is a path through these things, and that we will find it, and that things will become normal again. And you all are part of that. And there are many of you who have seen a version of Don that I never got to, and I look forward to speaking with you and learning these stories, because that's part of the beauty of a community like this, is someone is now gone, but you still get to know them. You still get to learn about them, the kind of person they are. You still get to be surprised. And I think that having a group of people like this together proves what a wonderful person he was, and what a loss that this is. So I thank you all for coming and showing up and supporting us, and for being someone that he loved as well. So thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Alex, and this is my sister Sarah. We are Don's nieces and nephews, Dwayne's great children. Again, thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Adam. That's great. I don't know if I'll be able to follow up with anything as good as that, but I will try.
Well, to echo Adam and my dad, it's been really amazing seeing all the people that Uncle Don has touched, and how loved and admired and cared for he was. And as difficult of a time that, as difficult as it has been to come to terms with losing someone that's been so impactful and meant a great deal to us, it's also very comforting knowing how fulfilling of a life that he did live. And Uncle Don was funny, he was very stubborn. He was very fiery, but he filled every room with very inappropriate jokes, and some belly laughs, and really just a sense of feeling so appreciated and loved. He made all the people around him just feel like the most special person in the world, and we're all so lucky that we were able to have someone like that in our lives. He taught us Yingers what a jagoff was from a very young age. He instilled in us to appreciate some of the finer things in lives, like a really good donut. He'd always take us to go get donuts anytime we would visit, which we remembered him by yesterday by going to get some donuts for breakfast. And he was always the first to laugh at everything that our parents would normally roll their eyes at. So he was truly our worst influence, but in all the best ways possible. There were so many coined phrases that have stuck with our family over the years, and a lot of those have come from the memories that we were able to make with Uncle Don. So I wanted to share a few of those with you guys. First one being, I was right and you were wrong, which came from the time that Uncle Don was driving me home at a very young age, and he turned down the wrong street, where I quickly let him know, Uncle Don, this is not the right turn. And he responds, oh honey, I know where they live, it's okay. He kept driving only to realize that he did indeed make the wrong turn, and as he looks back to apologize, I said, see, I was right and you were wrong. And it's stuck with us for many years, still to this day.
And then we also frequently use the term snook instead of sneak, because when I was a child, I decided I was going to take some York peppermint patties from his bowl to the movie we were going to go see. And I waited until we were an hour into the movie to let Uncle Don know that I had snooked some York peppermint patties in. And by that point they were liquid, but I still shared them. And he still gratefully accepted them and ate them. That's just the kind of uncle Don is.
We'll keep this short because we know there's a lot of other people that want to go. But we're just so lucky to have so many memories that we're able to look back on and cherish for a lifetime. And we just really want to say thank you and how appreciative we are for all of you coming out. And it's been great hearing stories that, like Adam mentioned, we might not otherwise have heard. They might not be the most PG, but we enjoy hearing them still. So thank you all.
Thank you all for coming and being here so much.
Did a good job keeping that PG. I appreciate that. So next we'll have Nick Andrews come up, and followed by his son Scott Andrews.
When we were planning, I was with Arlene and Carol planning this event. We were hoping to have about 65, 70 people. We ended up having 140.
Oh.
So, just heartfelt thanks for everybody coming out to honor Don and his celebration of life. You're growing up, and you with your best friend growing up. There's a few things in life that really prepare. What are you prepared for? And doing a eulogy for one of your best friends is not something you really plan for. But he impacted my life with his friendship and his love, for my family. That I can't begin to, tell you what it meant to me. But Don's ultimate dream, though, he wanted to be a game show host. He loved Wink Martindale. Bill Cullen, Pittsburgh guy. He just, Gene Rayburn with microphone. Loved him. So, so I met Don when I was 14. I just moved to onto Woodhaven Drive, and he was leaning against my dad's car, and I had heard it. He golfed, So he was just getting lessons at Rolling Hills now, golf club. And shenanigans ensued immediately. Prank phone calls. Legendary Dennis Benson on Sunday night. He would call up, and he would lead us off, and my brothers would be right behind him. We'd be the first one in the phone bank. And then he would call Ed and Wendy King. There's a thing on KDKA called Party Line. And, he would call up Party Line, and you wouldn't hear the caller, but you would hear Ed and Wendy, who were, and this was on at 10 o'clock at night. And it would always be like an information thing, like the menu, what a great recipe would be, or something like that. Well, Don called up one time, and Ed had to stop and just said, "Sir, is there something wrong with you?" And then, obviously, there was always the random phone book Cadillacs for sale, phone calls. Call up and say, "I hear you have a Cadillac for sale for $75.50. So we walked to school every day from my sophomore year all the way through high school, and cut lawns together. Played that little 9-hole course at Mount Lebanon, and went to a lot of baseball games together at Three Rivers. So, so he loved sports, but he wasn't the best athlete. However, he did win the intramurals up at Beaver campus. He won 2 wrestling matches in one night, and won the division. He won his weight class. So he had Steelers season tickets. He went to numerous glorious baseball games together. So he also had a dog. His name's Duchess, and his mom would always introduce it as the dog loves everybody except Nick Andrews. Because the first time I met her, she ripped the pocket off my so, we went up to Penn State. Our years ensued, and the incredible experiences and friendships we developed. And our first trip we went up to all-U weekend together in my yellow Volkswagen. It was a 4.5-hour drive in my back then it was Route 22, all it was lights. And now it's like a 2.5-hour drive. It was 4.5 back then. So you had to, go driving through downtown Tuna and all that stuff. Well, the Volkswagens back then, to get a tape deck in there would cost about a third of the car. So we ended up bringing up my cassette deck, and he would play DJ as he would want, and he would play DJ the whole time up. So he graduated in '77 with a degree in finance, and really never answering the question that our great friend Pete Reddington once asked: what do finance people do? And he did have a picture taken for the yearbook, but he never bought the yearbook. So, but really, here's the question: is when do you take a friend like that off a speed dial on yourself? I mean, it comes up all the time. It's tough. Don was the best friend. He was the glue for all of us. He kept us connected. He was the organizer, facilitator, the one who remembered everybody's birthdays. Of course. He remembered everybody's birthdays, anniversaries, inside jokes. He stood by our friend, Timmy Gallagher, during his final years, even during COVID. He would stand outside the nursing home, looking through the window, talking to him through the window. He gave an awesome, heartfelt eulogy at our friend Ron Torconia's eulogy funeral. And he was there for his mom, Sonny, in her final years, with the same loyalty and passion he gave to all of us. He was the best man at my wedding 45 years ago, and more than Uncle Don to our sons and grandchildren. And as my granddaughter Sloan always says, Uncle Don always brings the best gifts. He was the best of people we will ever know. His laughter, his loyalty, and his deep love for his friends and family. Those things don't fade and will stay with us. So let us carry with us, in our stories, our jokes, our traditions, and the hand puppets he would bring on dates when he was taking a ventriloquist class. And the way he stood up for all of us. Here's to you, Don, our friend, our brother, and our blue. We love you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Dave Andrews. Well, it says a lot about a person that has 3 generations of friends that love him. Just we love Uncle Don. I've known him my entire life. He would babysit. We'd always watch Three Stooges, Adam West, talking into our shoes like Get Smart, and the black and white version of Superman. It would often lead to nightmares and me being up all night, but we watched them together. Our outings were almost once a month. Getting donuts somewhere, ending up in a mall, getting him to do different dares of picking up women, as he always did. He never said no to us, and was, more than happy to continue that tradition with my kids. They, all of us getting donuts together was a highlight of all the time. First time we did Duck Donuts without him was very tough, but we got through it. Like my dad said, my son loved, Uncle Don always gave the best presents. And I had laughed because I also remember getting the best presents from Uncle Don. And as a parent now, I realize they are not appropriate. My wife often rolls her eyes when she sees them. And I just laugh because I'm only certain that's the way my parents felt. There's so many stories in my 40 plus years of life knowing him, from fart jokes, pull my finger pranks, the general goofiness of Uncle Don, some of the songs he gave us. And it really didn't hit home for me until my birthday came around in March. He was always the first one to text me, and sometimes between 4 and 5 a.m. because he never slept. But it was always fun to wake up to those, and on my kids' birthdays, he was always doing the same thing. So I just want to end by thanking his family for letting us borrow an Uncle Don, and we'll always have. I'll keep it short because Dave took most of mine. But yeah, Don, we grew up with Don as an uncle, but I mean, he was more than an uncle. He was one of the kids. His humor was not the most intelligent, but really the best. I mean, he always made sure he paid homage to Homer Simpson. I mean, as many donuts as possibly could. He loved me getting powdered donut as all over me. He loved the stupid things we would do as kids. He used to take us to the mall to ask out, to convince us to shout hubba hubba at random girls passing by. But we returned the favor and make him ask out every girl that passed. If they worked at the KFC drive-thru or the gas station. Not sure if all those girls were appropriate ages, but he still did it. And then his absurd giggle afterwards. He did love the Three Stooges, and we went to go see that movie that came out a couple years ago. There might have been 6 other people in that theater with us. But his laughter the whole way through the movie. And you can picture this loud cackle happening constantly. I mean, it's a comedy, but people were turning around to stare at us because he was just laughing his ass off the whole time. Inappropriate jokes, fart humor, and teaching us the rousing story of old Ben Lucas, who had a lot of mucus coming out of his nose. Yeah, he was one of us. I mean, we grew up with not just an uncle, but a best friend. And, you know, he was at every holiday, at every birthday. It's definitely gonna leave a hole for a while. But I can say happily that every memory of him was happy, fun, absurd, and we laughed at everything with him. So I have nothing but great memories of him to look back on, and I think that's something that he would have wanted. He just wanted fun, just wanted to have fun at all times. So I think he left a legacy that he would have left behind, and that says a lot about him. So again, thank you guys so much for letting us have this extra uncle. He was our favorite, and thank you.
Okay, so inappropriate seems to be the theme. No surprise, right? If we can have Bill Kosis, and after that, Sharon Dixon come up and give us some memories.
Hi, my name's Bill Kosis. I'm one of Don's friends, which he was everybody's best friend. But I'll make this real brief. Don had great range. He was like my daughter's uncle. You know, they play Happy Hippo and all that. And you know, but he would take care of my dad too when he was alive, because he always had a word for him, and I hear them chuckling downstairs at my house in the morning. They'd wake up, they'd be laughing so hard, those guys. So he added a lot of value. And just everybody he touched, loved to see him. I'll just give you one quick, and I have millions of stories, most of them we couldn't tell here. But I have one I think is pretty comical and acceptable for the audience. Don was a big Steeler fan, and he had a couple tickets, and he always, I think he got them from his dad, passed down, etc. And he'd take me to a game about every year. So I went out to one game with him, and we had lunch, and I won't go through all the details, but we go to the game, and we have dinner, and so we made a day out of this. And it seemed, when I had days like that with Don, it would go by in 1 minute. That's what a good time we were having. But anyway, we come back to the parking lot, and his car is the only one there. And it was still running. We dropped it off. I said, "Hey, Don, your light's running." And the guy comes running over. He goes, "It was like, man, we've been looking for you guys. That car's been running all day." So Don, like nothing happened. So he goes, "Oh, I've done this before." He picks up the car and it starts right up, and we just drive away. It was like this man lived in the moment. And I'm going to miss him terribly. He was a part of my life, and he stayed all the way for, it must be like 50 years. And I can't say one bad word about this man. He was just a tremendous friend, and he was part of our extended family as well. And I know the loss everybody's taken here, etc. And I think it's really great everybody got together like this. So thank you very much.
Hi. First I want to start off, aging is an extraordinary process where you become the person you always should have been. This actually describes Dawn. Hi, I'm Sharon. Dawn has been my best friend, I guess it's 52 years. My husband doesn't quite understand how I have a guy best friend, but we have been best friends. Dawn and I even though I live in State College and he lives in Pittsburgh, we talk at least once a week. We text all the time, but we know each other's secrets. You know, I tell him everything that sometimes I don't tell my husband. And he knows that, you know, he knows when I'm having problems, and he tells me different stuff. I mean, I knew when he lost his job one time, and, you know, and when he lost his license. And every time I come back to Pittsburgh, because I come back once or twice a month, you know, frequently we have coffee or meet for lunch or meet for dinner, and we talk about different stuff. But we have been very, very close. So today we gather, you know, we have heavy hearts to honor, you know, one of my best friends, Don. You know, I always cherish his memories, his stories, his advice that we've shared. You know, we're here to celebrate his life. You know, it's so great to see so many people here and all the people that we went to school with. He was one of the first people I met when we went to Harmony Hall on Beaver campus. It was him and Ron and Jeff, I think, were the first three people that I met when I went into the dorms. I have a really big void in my life right now because I don't have him to talk to. So many times when I wake up in the morning, it's like, I gotta tell Dawn this, and he's not there. And for him, I know he's lost a lot of people in this past year. I've lost him, and I lost my girl best friend in this past year too. I know he has a lot of love. He had a lot of love for his family. He always talked about his mommy. He always referred to his mother as his mommy all the time. And when his mom got real sick, he said, Sharon, he goes, I'm going to take care of my mommy the same way that you took care of yours. He goes, I'll be going down to Florida a lot. And he did. And he always talked about his sisters and how he would always love to go visit his sisters and visit his nieces and his nephews. He had a lot of love for his guy best friends, and he spent all his holidays with Nick and Bernice. He loved children, and he told me about all the presents he bought all the children all the time. So I know about all the inappropriate gifts that he bought. And with Ron, I know Ron's passing was really hard on him, and he bought presents a lot for Olivia, and I know he didn't get to fulfill his wish to Olivia taking her to a baseball game. Don was a real stellar guy. I mean, when my mom was sick, my mom got life flighted into Pittsburgh, and I couldn't get there right away, but he's the one who showed up in her hospital room. He was the first person she saw whenever she woke up was Don. But Don was the person, taught me how to embrace life and showed me that a smile could bridge any gap. Reminded me that love and friendship were the treasures on this journey, but his journey was cut too short. When we were at the dorm, I had to work the whole time that I was in school, so I got a job over at Musicland over at the Beaver Valley Mall. As soon as I got a job, I came back to the dorm after work one night, and Don said, Sharon, he goes, I want a job too. He says, can you convince your boss to give me a job too? So I went into work the next night, and I asked him, I said, do we need any more help? And I said, I have somebody in the dorm who would like a job too. And he says, well, have him come up here and talk to me. So Don went over, and they hired Don. And of course, Don talked more than he worked. But Don loved the job. And of course, Don convinced the one guy there, Ron, to go buy some beer for the guys at the dorm. And I don't know if it must have been a quarter keg, because I know it was in a keg. And so Ron went and bought the quarter keg. And of course, they went and put it, I think it was behind one of the buildings on that half circle. so they could have a party, and of course, they got caught by the police. But Don liked the job, and I think one of his biggest pleasures was he caught some guy, you know, hiding, they were the cassette tapes and VH tapes under his jacket. You know, he chased him down the hall. But he enjoyed that job for the short while that he had it. In the early 80s, when we were at when I still lived in State College, I still do. Dawn and Sam and Pete and their wives came up to State College, and Dave Manley came up to State College during the Arts Festival, and we were up on University lawn up in Old Main, and Bo Diddley was playing. And the guys thought that they should see Bo Diddley, meet him. And back then, they just played on the lawn, so they went behind, and you know, they don't have security then. So they just went behind and met Bo Diddley. You know, you don't do that kind of stuff. Up in State College, you have to have, what's it called, security or whatever. And so they just went right behind and somehow met him. And it was pretty neat because we have a picture out somewhere, Bo Diddley and all of us with a picture. So, you know, that was a pretty neat thing. But all of us together from the dorm with Dawn, you know, we've had reunions, we had a big football reunion where we all met up in State College, and that was right before COVID. And we've had a wine reunion, we've had, I don't know what restaurant that was. Nick, what restaurant was that we went to? I'm sorry? That was a winery, right? But we went to a restaurant where we had reunion. Start with an F?
Chadwick.
Okay. But we went to various places. We went up to some bars where we got together. We were trying to stay together. You know, 52 years, and we're still getting together to keep our group together. And hopefully we can still do it. I mean, here we are approaching some of us are 70 years old. And hopefully we can do this still into our 80s. But no matter where we go, if you look at all these pictures of Don, every picture you see of Don, he has a smile on his face, which is pretty neat. But even though our time together with Don is temporarily ended, you know that when we see Don again, there will probably be another party in heaven. So just keep your memories of Don, you know, keep fond memories of Don. I know it's hard. I miss Don. I know all of you miss Don. And you know that I've never seen Don mad at anybody. Maybe some of you have, but I have never seen Don mad at anybody. And everybody loves Don. I know I love Don in my heart, and I know all of you do. But just keep him close. I just want to tell you about a real funny thing that happened though, one of his last days. It was Don passed away on Thursday, it was Tuesday. And Sam and Jim and Dave were out signing some papers with Carol and Arlene out in the hall. And I was in there with Don, feeding him some Ensure. And I was holding his hand. He squeezed my hand, and I said, Don, I said, those guys would really like it if you would say yak, yak, yak. And he squeezed my hand, and real low, he said, yak, yak, yak. Now his eyes were closed, of course. So real low, he said, yak, yak, yak. I said, no. I said, when the guys come in, you got to say yak, 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 real loud. So the three guys came in, at the end of the bed. They were standing at the end of the bed. And I said, Dawn, I said, what do you want to say today? And all of a sudden, Dawn's eyes open up, and real loud, he said, yak, yak, yak. And if you could see the expression on Jim and Dave and Sam's face, they laughed so hard. It was like the best moment ever. The best moment ever for those guys. I mean, they laughed so hard. And it was like, wow, this was great. This was great for those guys. Yeah, it was the best. So, I mean, it was like the best memory for us for Dawn. So, okay, thank you.
Good yak, by the way. Good job. All right, we're getting down to the end of the list, guys, so appreciate your patience, but I had to tell you, everybody that gets up and tells a story, I'm learning something new, so I could do this all day. If we could have Pete Reddington followed by Gene Senator, that'd be great.
So when I met Don at 17, I really didn't, it took me a while to get him. I didn't know, I thought, who was this Boodman guy always complaining about the cafeteria food? What's his deal? And it took a while to really get to know him, but fortunately I had over 50 years to do so. It started, we had an English class together, English comp with Dr. McRoberts. And one day as we entered class, whole large sections of somebody's assignment was posted all around the room to be critiqued. And none of us in the class knew who the poor sap was that was chosen, but naturally that was Don. And Dr. McRoberts' mission was to get us to use a simple, concise storytelling and not be too creative or use a lot of vocabulary. But needless to say, Don didn't believe in simplicity. So the whole class and the instructor did, we spent a large portion of the class on constructive criticism. And at that time I still didn't know it was Don's paper. So after class I was standing next to him. He just dropped his paper, the return composition, onto the desk and said, change this grade. So McRoberts took out a red pen, crossed out the C- and made it a D-. So another milestone came from the early years. Nick mentioned the recording on the Cadillac for sale. We had a tape that was put together by the guys. They engineered it so that we were all in one room listening through speakers and the person on the phone couldn't hear us. And we could hear both sides of the conversation. And it was, I've been subsequently blamed for losing the tape, and I know that's not the case, but somebody lost it. But the main thing is the unsuspecting citizens of the Beaver Valley, he got us all laughing, but at the same time, he never managed to piss off the victims, and that was the strength of Don. Other than his dad, it seemed like nobody ever got mad at Don. So, between kids, old people, hot girls, or our biker gang, Don could walk up and talk to anybody and get along with them, and never get them mad. And so for the last 30 years, we've never called each other by name. We just called each other old man. So you were the best of us, R.I.P. old man.
Good afternoon. Hope everybody's having a good chuckle. As we used to say, cackling. You know, we're doing some cackling. And Don would love that we're here cackling today on his behalf. My name is Gene Senator. I met Don within days of arriving at Penn State Beaver campus. It was during orientation week, must have been the second or third day there, on the boat ride. We took a Gateway Clipper boat ride. And a few of us got some beers ahead of time, and we had about 20 minutes to drink them. And it was in Dave Manley's and Al Muir's room 204. And there was this guy next to me who I thought was the funniest guy in the world. It seemed like everything I said to him, he thought was funny. And that began our cackling journey for the next 51 years. We quickly became best friends, and some things I'll relate to you today, and there's a hell of a lot I'm not. But you know, it's been about 2 months now since we've lost Don, and I can't tell you there's a day goes by that I don't think of him. I can't escape him. We had so many interests, you know, especially music and sports. I can drive down the road and have the radio on, and an Allman Brothers song comes on. I can think about the many Allman Brothers concerts we went to. I watch TV. Yesterday, I'm watching a soccer match from Wembley Stadium in London, England. Don and I went there over 10 years ago to see the Steelers play, so I thought of him. Earlier this week, I'm watching a Dallas hockey game at American Airlines Arena in Dallas. Well, that was one of Don's and I's last big trip. We went to Eric Clapton's 2-day Crossroad Guitar Festival. 14 hours of music. But we have a hell of a good time. And there's many other sporting venues we've been to. Can't say we always saw sporting events. We've been to Citi Field in New York City 4 times. Did we ever see the Mets play? Nope. But we saw some great concerts there. And I even got to come to Boston, to come to Fenway Park, but not to see my beloved Red Sox. We were partying in the center field outfield, listening to Jimmy Buffett with a bunch of other parrot heads. So like I said, every day there's something that reminds me about him. And of course, coming up this week, next Saturday, is the Kentucky Derby. 40 years ago, Don and some of our other buddies made our first journey to the Kentucky Derby. And Don made many other visits over the years there. And I'll just relate 2 little incidents of Don while we were at the Kentucky Derby. The very first one in 1985, of course back then in the mid-80s, guys were wearing little short shorts, not big baggy shorts like today. So Don had on these short little red shorts. He didn't have his shirt on because in the infield, it's not like the other people go to the Derby with the hats and the ties. In the infield, it's a different story. And we're there with our lawn chairs and blanket. Don has these tight red shorts on, no shirt on, and even had a little bit of a color to him and his curly black hair. And he needless to say, he was the life of the party. And other people around us were starting to take notice and listening to him. And eventually they gave him a nickname, Pele, because he looked like Pele. And then there was another Derby. In fact, I think it was 15 years later, same group of friends. In fact, there was a picture that showed up here a little while ago. We're there in the infield, and there was a couple right by us, and the man and wife were wearing horse heads. And there was a newspaper reporter or somebody with a microphone interviewing them. Didn't think anything about it. Later that night, we're back, because I was living in the area. Later that night, we're at home, we're kind of all passed out in the living room, and we have the 11 o'clock news on, and all of a sudden, it's getting ready to be a commercial break, and all they say, coming up, some goings-ons from the infield, and all of a sudden, you see Don's head popping up between these two people with a horse, and I said, there's a picture up there of it. And, well, thankfully, they were going to commercial break. I had time to put a DVR in, and I was able to record it, and there was this reporter interviewing them. There were these 2 people with horse heads, and every minute or so, you can see this head popping up. So those were typical antics of Don. He always kept us entertained. And of course, as most of you know, and it's been mentioned earlier, Don is stuck in the 60s and 70s when it comes to sitcoms and cartoons. I mean, it wasn't unusual for me to get a text in the morning about something he saw in the latest Leave It to Beaver episode, or something that Jethro did on the Beverly Hillbillies, or some other cartoon episode that he had to relate to me. And of course, Don had a little bit of Eddie Haskell in himself, where he would, do something mischievous, but then stand back sheepishly, innocently, like he had nothing to do with it, and charm our parents and older ones. My parents loved him like another son, but he had that little shy, mischievous streak in him. And I'm going to leave you with a couple thoughts to try to remember Don by. The first one isn't that pleasant, but as you well know, we lost Don way too early because of a problem he had, a disease he had that he wasn't able to manage. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you folks not to have another alcoholic drink. That's not my place to do. But what I will say, before you have that next drink, be it your first one or maybe your fourth or fifth one, ask yourself a question: do I really need another drink? Now, on a more pleasant way of remembering him, Don had a huge heart. Some of the folks earlier have already mentioned it. What he would do for other people was unreal. I'll attest to it personally. Last fall, I had some medical issues myself. I wasn't able to drive. I lived by myself. I had no way to get to the doctor. I had no way to go get groceries. But if I needed something, there was Don to take me to the doctor, to take me to the grocery store. And of course, what he did for our buddy Timmy. Unfortunately for your folks that didn't know Timmy was stricken with multiple sclerosis. He spent most of his adult life like that, and probably the last 20 years either in nursing homes or assisted living centers. But what Don would do for him, taking him to Pirate games, taking him to Steeler games, taking him to lunch routinely, and making sure anybody else who was around would come join him. And as Nick mentioned, during COVID, Timmy wasn't allowed visitors. That didn't stop Don from sitting outside his window and visiting and checking on him, sneaking him in ice cream. That's just the kind of friend he was. So with that in mind, when you leave here today, over the next week or two, do something kind to a friend, a relative, a neighbor. And when you do, think of Don, because that's the kind of person he was. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. So finally, Marty? Where are you, Marty? Okay. I know we saw you sneak in.
Hello. I'll keep it brief, especially since we're being recorded. I worked with Dawn at PNC Bank for about 15 years. We started around the same time. And, we got very close, but I'll leave it at that. The two things I wanted to point out was, and my old boss is here, but he's now retired. Lunches with Dawn were long. So when Dawn wanted to take me to lunch, I said, oh, I gotta tell my boss we're going to lunch. And I would tell him, Ted, I'm going to lunch with Dawn, and it was like 11 o'clock. We'd get back at like 3. So now that he's retired, he can't discipline me. I just want and then the other thing at the end of, when we were with Dawn at the end, and I was texting him and, trying to get a hold of him and talking to Arlene and Carol, they said, we lost his phone. I said, thank God you lost his phone. Because I don't want anyone seeing what Dawn and I talked about. But in all seriousness, there's a lot of times I wish I could text Don right now because he really did mean a lot to me. And I mean, when I walk outside, I literally look at my phone and I say, I wish I could call Don because he was like my uncle, and I'm gonna miss him very much. And I'll never forget him. So thanks, Carol and Arlene, for letting me talk, and I appreciate it.
Thanks to everybody who spoke. Thanks to all you guys for being here and sharing the love. It's okay to have a tear in your eye, but just have that love that Uncle Don gave us. Keep it in your heart and share it with everybody here. Everybody's invited to a reception afterwards. We got some good food, a few drinks, and hopefully a lot of great fellowships. I'll remind you one more time, please write down your stories so that we can keep them in our hearts forever. All right? Thank you very much.